It is 5:30 in the morning. I've been awake for a couple of hours. I woke up in incredible pain, needed to pee, and just was awake. And so I set to work, going about the internet, listening to people do the thing they do. Every time I find somebody who seems reasonable and seems knowledgeable, they're just as ignorant as everybody else. They have this one thing. They have this one thing that they've pieced together because they think they have critical thinking skills, and so they've used the skills that they have to this point to arrive where they are, and they think those are good enough, and so they begun speaking, not knowing that the skill sets that they have aren't actually good enough to piece the whole world together, to piece everything together in a system that can then be taught. That takes longer than, oh, okay, I've figured out how finance works. And so I have come before you this morning from the dark of my tent to talk to you about something you don't want to hear. The repetition of the meme of the names such as Harvey Weinstein, Donald Trump, Kevin Spacey, unfairly, P. Diddy, again, maybe unfairly, and probably the reason that Spacey and Diddy are included in this meme format is because they were exonerated by a jury of their peers. And Weinstein never stood before a jury of his peers. And so we can use these names and we can defame these specific people in the specific meme format. But something that I've noticed is that the meme's never funny. Anytime anybody says the name, any of those names, any of the names, anytime anybody says the name P. Diddy, Harvey Weinstein, now we're back to talking about Kevin Spacey in these terms. Anytime anybody says these names of these people who were exonerated for crimes, they're not actually being funny. They're just mixing together the names of people who did heinous acts, and they're using the names to as placeholders for the heinous act and their desire to do the heinous act. And so every time that people bring these up, they're actually being worse than the people who committed the heinous acts, because the people who committed the heinous acts were able to be exonerated for their heinous acts. They were able to be exonerated. And so what is happening actually is that people are using these names, they're using the meme format of these heinous acts to make these heinous acts okay. And so you might be saying, no. That's not what I'm doing when I laugh at a Harvey Weinstein meme. Well, actually, it is what you're doing when you encourage the meme by laughing at it, because what you're doing is you are deliberately not empathizing with the victim. Because if you were the victim of a heinous act that had gone unpunished because the person was able to exonerate themselves, but you remain a victim whether they were exonerated or otherwise, what is not funny to you and what is not an enjoyable existence for you is having the crimes committed against you thrown into your face as funny constantly. What that is called traumatizing. And so every time you use the meme, whether it happened to you or not, or you believe the thing happened, what you are actually doing is laughing in the face of victims. You are laughing in the face of victims. You are perpetuating a crime. And you're making the crime okay because you're putting the thought in more people's minds. Every time you mention the meme, those people win again. And what you can't understand is being exonerated for war crimes, being exonerated for crimes against humanity. That hurts worse than the crime. That is your peers That is your civilization saying that the thing that happened to you wasn't a crime, and that that person doesn't have to pay a debt to you or the future. And so what that means is that this underground and hidden system of using wealth and power to steal sex from young people, to steal their futures, is being perpetuated and now made public. That's what's happening. That's what happens every time you repeat the meme. Every time you laugh at South Park, a criminal is made. And this is where we exist now. Real people were hurt by those actions that were deemed not criminal. Real people were hurt. It is not funny. It is not funny that Harvey Weinstein did not face his day in court. It is not funny that there is a list of crimes committed that was documented as an itinerary, that was kept as a journal. The minutes, the log of this club of perverts and criminals is not funny. It is the worst possible timeline. Laughing at it means that it's only going to get public. That when it turns out that, oh yeah, actually your neighbor has been sexually abusing the young people around him. And oh, actually it turns out that your teachers are sexually abusing the children around them. Oh, and it turns out that your coaches are sexually abusing the people around you. Oh, and it turns out everyone on the ballot is sexually abusing children. It's not fucking funny. It's systemic rot. The sun is going to explode in billions of years. That is an irrelevant problem, Jonathan. It's not funny. It is the worst possible timeline. And laughing at it is laughing while children are being harmed. Unacceptable. Unacceptable behavior. And that's what I had to say. So now I'm waiting on 6 a.m. I thought that might be able to stretch out longer, but I can see who's coming through. I can see. No, we're not talking about rights because you don't know what a right is. We are not talking. I just want. I am speaking. And I am not speaking about rights. Just been speaking for 8 minutes. You can back up that far. That's great. I just want it, but I already said that I'm done speaking. That's what I had to say. So you're obviously not all ears. You seem to be all thumbs. I was the term that you like to hear, molested. by order by older boys in my neighborhood between first and third grades until I was big and strong enough to defend myself. That my no meant something. And I have been asking myself since kindergarten where they even got the idea. Where did you even get the idea to do this stuff? And with me, with another boy, where did you even get the idea? Because I most certainly wouldn't have come to the idea independently. Nobody comes to the idea of sexual abuses independently. I sat and I eavesdropped. They didn't know. I kept my headphones on and I wasn't looking at them, pretending like I couldn't hear them. But I eavesdropped on this conversation between two adult Christian women. And the one could not have been younger than 28. Could not have been younger than 28. And her insecurities as regard men, her sexual experience, and her interest in sexual behaviors were the exact insecurities, the exact questions as every 12-year-old girl I have ever known or read about. And I used to be a teenage boy, and I used to talk to girls. I used to actually talk to them and listen to them about their insecurities. I've read the literature. I've watched the documentaries. There's a critter moving around outside my tent very close to me. This woman could not have been younger than 28. And frankly, she looked closer to 40 to me. She looked closer to my age. I'm 38, going to be 39 in the middle of the year. She looked closer to my age than she did to 25. And the looks that she was giving me were seeking out my approval. Hey, can you not? It is too early, man. I don't have food set out for you. Sorry, Lucas, Lucy, whatever your name is now. Females see sex as pair bonding and reproduction, just naturally, because that's what it is. The social cohesion, the social glue of sexual favors and prostitution go all the way back to our pre-Homo ancestors, because chimps and bonobos have extremes of that behavior that humans share. So that's a primate behavior that civilization has very strong opinions on, and I'm not here to talk about that. But we don't arrive at perverted sex acts, at the desire to do perverted sex acts to one another, non-pair bonding, non-reproductive sexual behaviors. We don't arrive at these things independently. We arrive at them from abuses done to us, abuses spoken of around us, or pornography that we have watched. This is why that serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer, while he was in prison, became a public speaker. He got to tour, whether he got to tour from prison or his DVDs were toured. He got to tour the country telling you that pornography is why he ate people. Now, you can believe that or you cannot believe that, but he didn't get the idea to do the heinous sex acts that he did to people from inside himself. He got the idea from somewhere. He heard it, he saw it, but he didn't get the idea from within himself. And in that same way, Weinstein and his cadre of criminals did not come up with their ideas themselves. They read about them somewhere, they heard them talked about, or they saw them in a movie. This is why when the Marquis de Sade was publishing the critical and cultural tastemakers of the day were saying that it was trash, that you shouldn't read it, and that it shouldn't be allowed to be published, that it was irresponsible garbage. Not because of any Christian ideology, but because people without the critical thinking skills necessary, without the mastery necessary, and without the personal excellence necessary would think that because the work was published, that gave them carte blanche and the okay to do the behaviors. Does it matter, egregore? What's the difference? If you're a 6-year-old child and you listen to somebody talking about how it's okay that Michael Jackson was having sex with children, whether he was or was not, does that not inform and reinforce? You would be. I just want it. A 6-year-old lacks internal excellence. A 6-year-old can reasonably be expected to say that they didn't know the difference and right and wrong. As I began, I was harmed by older boys, and for 30 some odd years, I've been asking, where did they get the idea? Because I got the idea from them. But where did they get the idea? Or if they got the idea from boys just a few older than them, where did they get the idea? This is not a self-perpetuating cycle. It has a beginning. Because people didn't live in North Carolina. People didn't live in Charlotte, North Carolina since the beginning of time. So if the self-perpetuating cycle came to the United States, where did it come from? We don't get ideas for ourselves. Notions don't just come to us from nowhere. That's a lie. When religious and otherwise intelligent people engaged in intellectual pursuits claim that an idea just came to them from nowhere, they're lying. They're telling you that so they don't have to do the background work of citing their sources. They don't have to go through the work of telling you where the question came from and the years of genius that they have cribbed from, the lifetime of ideas that they have stolen. If they just say, well, it just came to me. It came to me from nowhere. They can just talk about their genius, and they can keep you ignorant that there's an entire tradition from which they've stolen. Because if you don't already know, this is what I was talking about at the beginning. I scanning through TikTok videos of people trying to talk about big issues. But if you don't already know, when you start speaking, you can't know what you're talking about. What is an inclination in a 6-year-old boy? An inclination in a 6-year-old is the behaviors that they have been taught and trained to engage in their reality throughout the first 6 years of life. The first 2 years of life come without informed memories. The first 3 years of life come without access to informed memories. The 4th year of life doesn't have meaningful access to those memories. By 5, the memories of the first 4 years of life are useless to you. By 6, your memories from the first 5 years of life are useless to you. What that means is that you're an expert in the environment in which you have been raised through that first 6 years of life. Expertise is defined as 10,000 hours, sure, but in 6 years you still have an apprenticeship at being alive. So what that means, expertise in this situation, means that you have learned more about your environment than you can readily remember at any given moment. So what that means is that you've forgotten more about what you know than what you are readily thinking about at this moment. That is called mastery. You, at 6 years old, are a master of your 6-year-old environment. You're still an apprentice at being a human, but you are a master of that environment. So how, by 10 years old, did you come to the idea that you could hurt somebody, not because you, and get away with it, not because you had an inclination to hurt people by 10 years old or even by 6 years old, but because your environment taught you that you were allowed to hurt people and that you could get away with it? That's not about inclination, that's about environmental training. So when you're trained by your environment to cause harm, and that harm is acceptable to do if you can get away with it, and then in your environment you hear about different or novel kinds of harm, you can begin to arrive at experimentation with harm doing. Maybe I just want, maybe if your parents are criminals, you're going to raise up with the inclination to do crime. Maybe. Maybe if the people in your environment think it's funny that other people have gotten away with heinous crimes, you will think it's okay to get away with heinous crimes. Maybe. Maybe if we repeat the crimes as a joke and as a meme, and we remember the names of the people who perpetuated them, we can create a fame fallacy where getting away with heinous crime makes you famous, and it's a shortcut to fame. Every serial killer that's ever been caught came to that realization, that they would be more famous if they were in prison than if they were actively working. Every serial killer that's ever been caught came to that realization, organized or disorganized. That's how they get caught. In fact, that's how law enforcement catches them. They just wait for them to decide they want to be famous. We have a reactive law enforcement system. We don't have a proactive law enforcement system. So you can't actually hunt these motherfuckers. TV shows about hunting them are just that, TV shows. This is what I wanted to learn. Yes, well, my mother said, I just want that you can only think about things in terms of what you see, hear, and read. You can only think in terms of things that have been shown to you, that have been presented to you, or that you have found. If you learned about bad things, then your brain is telling you, hey, you learned this information, you need to think about it, or you're going to forget about it. And so you have to cycle these bad thoughts through your brain. You have to constantly remind yourself, oh, don't do that. Don't do that. It's not about inclination. It's about personal excellence. You lack personal excellence. So you think bad thoughts, and you have to think to yourself, oh, don't think bad thoughts. Don't fantasize about doing bad things and how good it would feel to be allowed to do bad things. But the only way that you know that it would feel good to do bad things is because you have seen and heard jokes about people being exonerated for heinous crime. Every time you hear Weinstein's name, you get a little bit of a bump. You get a little bit of a bump of dopamine because you think there's a potential that if you get rich, you can get away with doing those exact same behaviors. How do I know this? I sat once and watched Aaron Rodgers and Joe Rogan do this exact fantasy in public. We are allowed to do it in public now because these names, Weinstein, Diddy, and then Kevin Spacey, rather, because these names were exonerated, or in the case of Weinstein, never faced their day in court, because they were exonerated, they can be joked, they can be laughed at, they can be talked about in a sort of oppositionally defiant way of responsible, being oppositionally defiant of responsible discourse. We can talk about these things. But all you're really learning is that you can get away with crimes if you have enough money. If you have enough money, and you know enough people, and you get enough people to do enough bad things with you, you can get away with heinous crimes against humanity. But that's all you've learned. And so then you turn to porn and you watch people pretend to be biologically related and fuck one another for your amusement. Because you aren't doing the thing. They're doing the thing that crosses a social boundary, that crosses a biological boundary, that crosses every kind of empathetic boundary. They're crossing it. You're just watching. You can tell yourself, I'm not really participating. But your participation makes it continue, makes it available for you to continue telling yourself that you're not participating. We do not live in a consensus reality, but humans live in a representational reality. And you can tell yourself so long as people don't believe that you are doing heinous acts of criminal behavior, doesn't mean that you are doing heinous acts of criminal behavior. This is how fucking Gacy thought that just because he was working in the public interest, in the public good as a politician, he was allowed to kill and eat people. Because he had an original perversion of the attraction to males. So because he was sexually attracted to males, a perversion in its own right, he convinced himself to do all of these other things. But where did he get the idea to be attracted to males? Because that doesn't come from nowhere. That's not a biological switch. It isn't. No matter what they've been telling you since 2003. I was in high school when they were telling me that it's just a biological switch whether I'm gay or not. That my attraction to males has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I was raped as a boy. Cannibalism is just another perversion. Humans are not nutritionally viable. 1,500 animal species? I don't know what that means. The ritual cannibalism of tribal peoples is what we could call them, right? Pre-civilizational peoples, even post-civilizational peoples. But ritual cannibalism comes from a place of grief. And so what that means is that the serial killer, right, the pervert who eats his victim, he's eating them out of ritual grief, out of ritual mourning. It's a way to ritually absolve themselves of what they've just done. Dahmer would tell you that. What about gluttony? Gluttony comes with its own guilt. You ever talk to a fat person? A person whose only characteristic is that they're overweight? It comes with its own guilt. It comes with its own pattern justification behaviors. Pattern justification behaviors are called rituals. Purification ritual by any name is a purification ritual. If you're purifying yourself of any kind of sin, any kind of guilt for which you feel that you need to be absolved, what you are doing is a purification ritual. Call it whatever you want. Humans are humans. You don't get to claim to be some post-human new species. It's not the 1970s anymore. We know better. You did not speciate. You are not, what are they called? You are not a vertigo child. Or not a vertigo child. An indigo child. That's the color. You're just not. That's not a thing. It's not real. In fact, indigo children are exactly what I'm talking about. Mothers who tell their children that they're gods and they can do whatever they want, and that they, by the very nature of their being, are the justification for their behavior. Speciation happens over time because sex and food changed. And so humans aren't going to speciate because our sex and our food habits are interchangeable anywhere you go on the planet. You can eat and fuck among any other humans. So we're just not going to speciate while we're on this planet. We have to have a near extinction event where food and sex radically change. And so that's what I'm talking about. That is exactly why the powers that be encourage you to joke about this, because they need you to be having gay sex. They need you to believe that there's not a population crisis, and they need you to believe that poor people are expendable, so that when the only people remaining are the rich people and their direct slaves, we can speciate into two different species, the rich people and their slaves. That's why we're working so hard on designer babies. They have to be able to draw a line at a genetic marker in order to prove that their race is superior to yours. They've been working on this in the public record since at least the Wars of the Roses, but you don't know anything about anything, so you just don't know they're doing that. I watched a guy try to argue from an intellectual position that race doesn't mean anything, because it seems to be that the further south you live on the planet, the darker you are, when really the closer you live to Central Africa, the more you look like the base human species. The further you radiate out from Africa, the more you see sexual selective speciation dimorphism, right? So we look different. We have different skin shapes. We have different facial shapes. We have different noses. We have different ears. We have different lips. We have different the fat pockets on the body collect in different places. These are evidence of what people in the 1500s would have identified as your race, your family. So your race is your direct genealogical line. This is why in the Wars of the Roses they were obsessed with genealogies, and those wars were fought almost entirely over genealogies. And this is why the genealogies went all the way back as far as history could reach, even if they were insane. People like the genealogies of Rome that tried to connect them all the way back to the Iliad and Troy and the late Bronze Age, right before it collapsed. They didn't have any way of knowing anything about the late Bronze Age before it collapsed. They had no way of knowing. They could not read any of what was written. They couldn't read any of it. None of it in Rome. None. Virgil could read none of the Egyptian hieroglyphs. He could read none of what was to be found in Malta. None of it. He could know nothing about the Bronze Age and before the Stone Age. They could know nothing as far as historicity. But what they had was very, very good mythological cultural memories because of their families. The families had what we call today racial memory. Why did they call it racial memory? Because in the ancient world, all the way up, this is a tradition that was held all the way up to World War II, and it's why World Wars I and World War II were fought. They were fought over these genealogies. They were fought over these ancient familial lines, because what happened with the industrial age and the birth of the tycoon is the ancient families that had kept the world alive by moving money around and making sure that there was money and food to be moved around, and had been doing so since the late Bronze Age collapse across the Mediterranean and the rest of the world. This is real history. This is all real shit. Look it up for your fucking self. You do the fucking work. I don't have to share my sources because I'm not standing in front of you as an historian. But I've read the books. You can look at my bibliography. It includes hundreds of books. But anyway, when the tycoons became a thing, those families became evidently irrelevant. This is why Marxism and socialism became a thing. This is why communism is a thing, because it seems like the families that kept the world moving are irrelevant when you can just own a factory and feed a village. But here's the fucking problem. That's bullshit. It's just a stupid idea. It's just oppositional defiance to the way the world was working at the time, with new evidence of a United States that had these factories and these tycoons. But the way the tycoons worked was by doing the work of those families, of those racial lineages, just in the United States. And so when the world collapsed, because all of those families had finally run out of money at World War I and World War II, the Great War of the 20th century, once those families had finally been bled dry of money, or the nation states around them had collapsed into communism and assassinated them or forced them into exile, what happened is the United States came in, and the tycoons, using their exact model, just replaced them across the entire planet. And so now you have people like Jeff Bezos and the Rockefellers. You have these big family names, but that's the exact same racial lineage thinking that established the European world. So you don't have to like racism. You don't have to like prejudice. You don't have to like the idea that Mexicans behave a certain way, or pockets of African Americans in certain economic statuses in certain places in the United States behave a certain way, or that white people of certain socioeconomic status behave a certain way relative to other white people of certain socioeconomic. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like it. But here's the thing: white, to be a white person means to be of English genetic stock, and that does not mean to be of Welsh genetic stock. It doesn't mean to be of Irish genetic stock. It doesn't mean to be of Scottish genetic stock. It means to be specifically Anglo-Saxon, and it even means to be continental Anglo-Saxon. It actually doesn't mean to be the genetic admixture of the Angles and the Saxons with the people who were already on the British continent. That's what white means. White means to have a racial genealogy that stretches back to the Angles and the Saxons before they migrated into Britain. That's what white is. So when non-white people talk about white people based on their skin color, they're actually doing the kind of racism that you don't like. And true white people, the rich people of Anglo-Saxon heritage, look at them and they laugh at their ignorance, and they use their ignorance to keep them ignorant by publishing their ignorance as hip-hop, by publishing their ignorance as black entertainment television, by keeping them within a community that doesn't need a gate, by just capitalizing black. Black in the English language means dirty, tarnished, or decadent. It means evil. It means the thing that you just don't want to be. And so when we were talking earlier where you said it's just that you have these things that you've been told or things that you don't want to be, and you have to think about them constantly. Are they really things I don't want to be? That's what the N word was. The N word was the word that we used for all the behaviors that you don't want to be. That is the one thing you don't want to be. And then among masculine culture, the F word was the one word you did not want associated with you. But etymologically, both of those words go back to the Viking invasions. Both of those are Nordic words that mean the lowest rung of human society. To be a man who willingly bottomed for another man was to be lower on the social totem pole than to be owned by another man. It was a free will sacrifice that put you beneath slaves in the honor system. And see, what we no longer have is honor. What we no longer do is have honor and dignity. We no longer honor ourselves. We no longer honor our parents. We no longer honor our grandparents. And in that way, we no longer honor our racial lineages. But see, blackening your racial lineage just allows the people that keep theirs pure to rule the world. It just allows Donald Trump and whoever Donald Trump wants to run after him to keep getting elected. If you don't want him to get elected, do something besides muddy your jeans. You know, they say diarrhea runs in the genes. There, I gave you 40 minutes on the subject that I only really had 8 minutes to talk about. I knew it wasn't going to be as short, and I knew that if I just opened my camera, I wouldn't post it because YouTube is not going to like that I've been talking about this at all. They're not going to demonetize me. This isn't monetized. They're not going to take the video down. It's not monetized, and not enough people are ever going to watch it that they're going to be in trouble, or they're going to feel like they're going to get pressure to take me off the internet. Because I'm not saying anything that's untrue. I'm just using words I'm not allowed to I'm using words that I'm not allowed to use in short form. I'm not allowed to promote that I've been talking about this. Hey, I use YouTube to talk about things that YouTube really isn't allowed to talk about by their own community guidelines. It's not that they're not allowed to talk about them. It's that they're not allowed. My stuff is all not for kids. So I'm allowed to talk about whatever I want. And I'm not breaking any community guidelines. But by their own algorithm, is just not really allowed to promote people talking about this, because the broader community of YouTube is here to learn, but they're here to learn at their pace, and that means that they're here to learn at an introductory speed. They're here to be introduced to topics over and over and over and over again until they feel like they have mastery of the introduction, because that's all they were given for 13 years of primary education and then an additional 4 years of university. When you graduate with a bachelor's degree, what you have is a mastery of the skill sets that you need as a 6-year-old. Primary school stops teaching you new skills at 3rd grade. Your bachelor's, your undergrad in university is just making sure that you have mastered them. That's all it's doing. It's just ossifying them. Ossifying them means turning them into stone. This is why undergrads come out of their undergrad, they get on YouTube, and they feel superior to you. And they present the information that they have been given as though they are superior to you for having it. But the information that they have was all given to you by the time you graduated high school. You were just busy fucking off. I wasn't. No one believes this, but I used to come to my teachers with appropriate metamaterial to expand my education, and they never were prepared to engage with it. They were prepared to engage with the syllabus, and that was all. They were not prepared to engage with metamaterial. They were not broadly educated, broadly read, broadly interested people. They were educated. I don't understand why my battery keeps turning off. It works for a little while and then it turns off. It's very strange. It's never done this before. Maybe there's just a little bit of moisture in the port. Maybe it's just starting. Maybe it's just finally starting to go bad. I didn't really use it through the worst of the freeze, the worst of the cold. And that's that. I don't really talk about this stuff on my Patreon anymore, but it's more appropriate to my Patreon. So if I have more people subscribe to it, more people asking about it, I can go back to writing essays, posting essays, reading essays, doing prepared video work for the Patreon, like this. But the genealogies thing is very real. I get triggered. I get extremely triggered, as I was raised dirt fucking poor. We spent the summer between my 4th and 5th grade, no, my 6th and 7th grade years homeless, like living in a hotel. We were dirt fucking poor. So I get triggered. I get fucking triggered when people say that race isn't a real thing, because being able to deny race is racial privilege. That's fine. Thank you, just want it. Being able to deny that who your grandparents were and who their parents are is the privilege of people whose great-grandparents were successful. See, I don't even know who my great-grandparents are, not because they were dead before I was born. Many of them were, but because my grandparents were all either orphans or the product of abuse that was so bad and so intimate that those people may as well have been dead. I'm unlikely to remember that, but heard. So being able to say who my grandparents were doesn't matter for who I am as a person. That's the privilege. That's the privilege of, well, no, not even being able to say it, being able to have that unspoken thought. Being able to have the unspoken thought and expect people to believe it, to just live their lives like it's true. That's racial privilege. That's having grandparents and great-grandparents who were successful. It's not true. Who your grandparents were, who your great-grandparents were, who your parents were matters. I basically dropped out of high school after my freshman year because I couldn't get anything. I couldn't win anything that was supposed to be a competition. It always went to the kids whose parents spent a lot of money in boosters. And once I realized by the end of freshman year that the kids in that high school who were going to be successful were the kids whose parents were heavily involved in boosters, I realized that just because I was going to the high school that my mother had graduated from, that both of her sisters had graduated from, that my cousin had graduated from, that includes my aunt had just graduated 2 years before, and my cousin had graduated the year before I attended high school, that just because my family were an institution at this school, as far as the people who had graduated from it, did not mean that my family were an institution at this school, as far as the people who were spending money to make sure that the school could provide institution for their students. So I effectively dropped out of high school after freshman year. And I did Spirit Day every year. I went to the nines for Spirit Day, and I competed every year to win that Spirit Day competition. Every year, knowing that I wasn't going to win it. And I did it my senior year. Only 3 people competed, and they only gave out 1 winner. They didn't do the top 3 because only 3 people competed, and they would have to give me a prize as a middle finger to that whole school. Let everybody who is graduating, because it was 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and high school. Let everybody who is attending this school see that the only person who actually gives a shit about Spirit Day, the only person who actually went to the nines for it in this whole fucking school, is the only person who's not going to be acknowledged by this school because of who my family was, because of who my family were. I wasn't allowed to be the lead in the musical my senior year because the other senior males who did the musical once, who just joined there. I'm not even mad about this. I'm emphatic. I'm using emphasis. Hey Rach, the people who joined that year, the seniors who joined that year, their parents were boosters. Their parents spent a lot of money to make sure that production got to happen. And so I knew I wasn't going to get to be the lead. And in fact, because the leads were so unprepared, we didn't even have dance numbers in the second and third acts. We just stood on stage and did our numbers because that's all they were technically proficient at. The only reason they did musical is because they had to take an art elective, and they didn't take an art elective any of the first 3 years of high school. So in order for them to graduate, they had to take an art elective. So they took chorus, and so they did musical. And so the musical my senior year was just a fucking disaster. And so your racial lineage matters. It matters. It matters a lot, because you might not even be allowed to graduate if your parents are unknown to the school system. If your parents, for example, if you're a poor black family and your parents have issues with authority because they were abused by the school system, or abused by their parents, or abused by their parents' friends, or abused by their environment, and they have issues with authority where they don't exactly like to be one-on-one with authority because they get anxious, and because they're not personally excellent, they don't have control over their emotions, and so they just choose to avoid the whole situation entirely. And so your kid is acting similarly in class, and you can't get the parent to sit down, you're just going to assume that the child is the product of criminal behavior, and you're going to assume that the child is going to begin doing criminal behavior in classroom, and that all of their behaviors, everything that they're doing that seems to be issues with authority, maybe it's just fear with authority because maybe they have an uncle who's super overbearing, or maybe the neighbor just yells at them for bullshit, or maybe a teacher they had in the past just used to blame them for everything, whether they did it or didn't do it. The teachers are just going to start treating that child like everything that goes wrong in class is because of them. And then that child is going to be put in a prison eventually, and then they're going to learn life skills that allow them to do what they think is being successful in their environment. And we're right back at where I began at minute 1. You don't get these ideas to harm people from nowhere. You learn to harm people and get away with it typically by people harming you and getting away with it over the first 15 years of your life. This is where we learn our behaviors. We don't just magically turn 18 and suddenly we're handed a set of human skill sets that we're now good at. It's not like, okay, so my family, because of all of the orphanages, because of all of the abandonment, because of all of the abuse, I didn't get this. But what my dad and his brother and his sister, and my mother and her sisters got similar things, but my parents didn't keep this tradition alive. I didn't get this. But what his dad did, what his mom did for him when he turned 18, was there was a gift. There was a gift given that said, all right, you're an adult now. And it was a suitcase. Pack your shit. You shouldn't have anything that you can't carry on your person. That's my family tradition. It's not that adults don't listen, it's that children don't listen. We are no longer trained to develop beyond the skill sets that we have in third grade. Whoever you were in third grade, if you didn't sit down and look yourself in the face honestly and say, all right, I got to be better than a third grader, you've never been given anything. No material in your life before you came across me was presented to you in any way but at a third grade level. Nothing. When you get mad at the writing of a commercial, you're getting mad at the logic of a third grader, with the logic of a third grader, with the self-righteousness and sense of justice of a third grader. That's a 9-year-old. Come on, Lucy, leave me be. No, learning that isn't what kept me from going down that path. I kept me from going down that path. I kept me from going down that path by rigorously controlling the inflow into my brain. When people say to me, oh, you're judgmental, I say, no, you're just corrupt. Corrupted. Like something that girlfriends have done with me in the past is be like, wow, you're so able to draw on the perfect song for this emotion that you're feeling or this experience that you're having. You're so able to connect these lyrics to this moment. And it's like, yeah, because I was rigorously controlling my input. Because I always knew that I was going to be a writer. I always knew that I was going to be a storyteller. From the time I was 6 years old, I was like, I am going to tell stories. I'm going to be involved in video games or movies. I'm going to write books, TV, something. I'm going to tell stories. I knew that. And so I rigorously controlled for that. But I was reading books about real human people, but also fictional people who rigorously controlled their lives. And rigorously controlled and themselves and their personal developments. Like, I shouldn't have been, but I read, I shouldn't have had access to it. I shouldn't have been allowed to check it out. But I read the Cushiels series in high school, for example, or I was reading Dris de Werden when you guys were all reading Harry Potter. And these are self-made people in some way. Sure, they're trained to be what they are, but they use what they've learned to be themselves, to make themselves, their characters and their stories. Even if in the case of the Cushiels, the original Cushiels trilogy, that means that Phaedra is always subject to the whims of someone more powerful than her. It's finding agency in the most extreme abuses. But that's what I'm talking about in the first 8 minutes. Finding agency in the most extreme abuses. The people that do horrible things had horrible things done to them. Where did those people get the idea? And so long as we continue to refuse to empathize with the victim by saying, well, it didn't happen to me, so it's funny that it happened to you, that justifies your best friend doing it to people. Eventually, it justifies you doing it. They don't make people violent. They create systems, they underlie systems that the person has built over a lifetime to justify being violent. Well, you can effectively act on something you're not aware of by being prepared, by working on the core self. What is martial arts? Are you punching all that rice because you know who's going to attack you? Like, what is stoicism? What is religion? What is education? Like, I'm watching this anthropologist the other day talk about this hill that he found. It's like, I found this hill. I was walking, he's in Ohio, in an environment not very far from me, actually, not that dissimilar to mine. He's like, I was just hiking, and I was walking up this near vertical hill, and I saw something. I heard it, near vertical hill, and I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. And he shows us the ground, and he goes, these are human artifacts. He goes, never before has it been documented that human, in North America, human artifacts, stone sherds, have never been documented on the side of a hill before. And this is a near vertical hill. He says, never been documented before. Okay. So how did he identify something that had never been documented before? He didn't have any idea he had no awareness that humans lived on that hill. He had no prior awareness that there were sherds on that hill. And the prior awareness that he did have was that humans didn't live in those environments. So how did he effectively act? To be aware is to be alive. It's really the only thing that being alive means. It means to be aware of the environment. That's why there's a question about brain versus body death and the coma. That girl in the late 90s who was in that coma, and it was a big deal because her husband wanted to let her go and her family didn't. Brain versus body death. If she's not aware of the environment, is she alive? Was the actual question. That's why your father has an opinion about that. Because it used to be a biological reality, and then it became a civil it became a civil litigatory argument. And as soon as it became litigatory, it became sophist, and it became meaningless. Sophisticated. So in physics, it's signal noise is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about information transmission and signal noise. So I was watching a guy today on TikTok eloquently and accurately describing to you how the world's financial system works, and that people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they have mountains of valueless money. They have mountains of accrued valueless money that make their life free, that make their life cost nothing. How did he know? Oh, I left the answer for you guys to answer. Okay. He knew because he knew how to identify human remains. He knew how to identify stone sherds. He knew how to identify flint knapped stones, and he knew how to date them by the particular fluting of the stones. He knew what he was looking at, even though it had never been documented before. It's like I showed the Believer tier yesterday. I showed them an Irving Finkel episode. And when I say episode, I mean a moment in Irving Finkel's professional career. where he's interviewing with an asshole, total douchebag, who has a massive platform. And yeah, I'm allowed to be envious and jealous of this, because my life will have come to a full circle and come to a complete place when I can sit from across the table and rap with someone like Irving Finkel. So yeah, I'm allowed to be jealous of this. I'm allowed to be envious. It's what I want. It's what I've always fucking wanted. Night, guys. And he was talking outside of his expertise about Göbekli Tepe. Okay? And he begins by saying it's outside my expertise, but the anthropologists and the archaeologists, the scientific team that excavated Göbekli Tepe, have unwisely, he said, unwisely, hey Dave, published all of their photos online. He goes, that was unwise, but they did it. So I was flipping through them, and I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. He says, I found a palm-sized little rock that's shaped kind of like an Egyptian scarab. It's round on the outside, and it's shaped flat on the one face. Palm-sized. You can't see my hand, but it's about palm-sized if you do that. It's about palm-sized. Convenient for holding in your hand like this. Kind of actually, it has the shape of a mouse, of a PC mouse. If you're familiar with Macintosh mice since the 90s, that sort of oval, like wet stone look, it's convenient to hold like this. And on the flat side, it has three shapes carved. One is very clearly a snake. The other, if you look at it for a little while, you realize, oh, okay, that looks kind of like a scarecrow with its arms raised in the air. Clearly a human being. He's a Sumeriologist, if you don't know who Irving Finkel is. Irving Finkel is a Sumeriologist. He's one of like 5 people on the planet alive today who can actually read cuneiform. Just fluently read cuneiform. There are very few people alive today with his skill set. And so he's trained, Rachel, he's trained to identify pictographs. He's trained to identify symbols that are writing. That's what he does for a living. That's what he does as an academic. He reads Sumerian. Sumerian is wedge-shaped impressions in clay that were then baked, that create a lexicon of words that you can write in and do numbers with. They're just wedge-shaped little impressions. They don't look like anything to us. They're not pictographs. They're very clearly abstracted symbols. And so the question that Irving Finkel is answering is, do you think there was a pictographic symbol that predated the writing systems that we have today? And the follow-up question is, how would we find it? The answer, instead of just going yes, being done, Irving Finkel, a person trained to read the system that he's predicting, and says, this is how I would predict you'd find it, and here's evidence for it. If you don't know, Sumer and writing are about 3500 BCE. If you say that writing was invented circa 3500 BCE, no one will ever quibble with you, ever. No one will ever quibble with you. But Irving Finkel is going, but there's this stone that they published a picture of that's out of place from the rest of the artifacts. And when you have an out-of-place artifact, what you don't have is an artifact that got there from the wrong time period. What you have is a technology that's not yet been documented. And he makes it, the third one, I don't remember what the third one was. It was an abstract symbol of the 3 characters that were on the front of this stone. And he says, what you clearly have is a seal stone. Clearly have a seal stone. All you have to do is dip that in any kind of pigment and stamp it on anything. And now that thing bears the seal stones and insignia. And he says, and it's even easier if you do it into clay. You do it into clay and you let that dry out. And now you've got money. Because what that symbol means is this guy worked in this, that this is the work that was being done. This guy is a worker. This is the food he gets. That's not just writing. They didn't just have writing. And this is the important part. 11,000 BC is when Göbekli Tepe was being constructed. 11,000, maybe 9,000. Still, it might be 11,000 BP. Still, 9,000 BC is a long time before 3500 BC. We're used to doing numbers. You're used to doing math. You're used to calculating big figures, right? $9,000 isn't that much more than $3,500. But 5,500 years is a long time. 5,500 years ago is when writing was invented in 3,500 BCE. If there was another 5,500 years before that, preceding that, writing is an ancient human behavior. Writing becomes, if they were writing and they were using money and Göbekli Tepe, and I think that Irving Finkel is right. I'm still answering your question, but I want to just make sure that this is impressed into your brain like that cylinder seal. Well, it's not a cylinder seal. Sumer used cylinder seals. They made these beautiful cylinders that had the whole thing that was being written on it or on the outside of the cylinder in bas relief, and they would roll it across wax tablets or clay tablets that hadn't been fired yet, and it would have the whole thing that needed to be written out. It's like, I'm sure you've seen this. We have stamps that are like that today. You know, and you one pass of the thing and you get the whole thing stamped out. They had cylinder seals like that for writing in the 3500s. And so what Irving Finkel is saying, that because of my expertise, because of what I already know, I'm prepared to say that this is a pretty advanced technology for people who invented this. That would be like, straight up, that would be like figuring out the mechanical typewriter and then the next day inkjet printers being available on the market. Yeah, you saw that in Indiana Jones because what's his name? George Lucas was being responsible as a storyteller. He was feeding you enough to get you interested beyond a third grade education in a master's degree in this work. He was being responsible. He was showing you things. He was showing you things that were technologies outside of time without saying anything about them. Because when those movies were made, the technologies being not in a fixed timeline was major controversy. Major controversy. We do owe George Lucas, yeah, if we could just put W's in chat for George Lucas right now, we owe George Lucas a lot. The future that we exist in today owes George Lucas not his vision, but his willingness to just mix all this bullshit together and then present it to you in an unfinished form. We owe him a massive debt of gratitude. He deserves none of the negative flack that he gets on the internet. Absolutely none of it. We owe him a massive debt of gratitude. And I know that Star Trek did the sliding doors thing, but we don't owe George Lucas a debt of gratitude just for the sliding doors of it all. Yeah, a long time ago and in a faraway place. That instantly allowed you to suspend your disbelief in a way that you took that story all the way to your grave. The people that watch the 1977 Star Wars film will take that movie and it will inform the way they live their lives for the rest of their lives. Everyone. I know I will. And if you say it didn't, if you're like, he did the legwork. He absolutely did the legwork. He was a massively interested person. He read a lot of different stuff while he was in university. And then he continued to read and develop his personal interests. And that's why Star Wars got fucking weird with the prequels. But he did the legwork. That's why, like, if you watch those movies and you just take yourself out of the 9-year-old of it and you put yourself in an adult who understands the fall of Rome and the complexity of the post 9/11 American system, and you watch those original trilogy, you can see that they were just a broad cultural commentary about the death of the United States and its republic. And they're beautiful social commentary. They're beautiful films. When you say the first three, do you mean the prequel films? Rach, do you mean 1, 2, and 3, or do you mean 4, 5, 6? Because I love the first 6 movies for different reasons. I actually think that of all 9, Empire Strikes Back is the weakest. Okay, 4, 5, 6. Calling them the first ones is a perfectly canonical way to address them. Because they came out first. They were the first trilogy. I just wanted to make sure that I understood your interest. Yeah. 4, 5, and 6. New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi are 3 of the best movies ever made, and I will fucking fight you over it. Return of the Jedi is a movie that I will fucking fight you over. People asked me the other day, somebody asked me my 5 favorite films, and Return of the Jedi should have been on that list. I couldn't think of it. It wasn't a movie that popped in my mind, but that movie informed who I am as a person. When Luke shows up at Jabba the Hutt's palace, I was in. And the video game, the SNES game of Return of the Jedi, I haven't played it as an adult, but what I remember of that game as a child, fucking masterpiece. And I am that person who, even at 6, 7 years old, was like, the movie's not like the book. And so I was very much, the game's not like the movie, I'm not interested. Magical. Luke first turns on that lightsaber on the fucking, on the ship out in the desert. And man, I was all the way in. I didn't know anything about swashbuckling movies. I didn't know anything about pirate movies. I didn't know anything about anything. I was 7 years old. And I was all the way in. All the way in. Give me that and give me more of it. And so I understand why people are upset about Star Wars. That it didn't just become this... that I'm also upset that Star Wars didn't become like Star Trek. It didn't become this running thing that we got movie after movie after movie where it can get utterly stupid and we can get absolutely fucking sick of seeing Mark Hamill on screen. Absolutely sick of seeing Leia and Hans, and these actors fucking hate it. Just utterly fucking done with Star Wars. I get why we're disappointed that we didn't get to see this fucking swashbuckling space romance. Because Star Trek was doing the other thing. They were doing the other thing. And so why can't we have our fucking sexual athletes in space? And the answer, frankly, is because Bucky Rogers had already done it, guys. That's why. The 80s and the 90s, 1977, guys. Star Trek, to the crowd that showed up in 1977, was watching a Bucky Rogers remake. And they had the same reaction that we have today to our beloved franchises being remade and have a new name slapped on them. That's why they've just started keeping the old names on them. Taught me everything. Yep. It taught me everything I needed to know about people who wronged me. Everything I need to know about what to do to people who wrong me. And what true forgiveness really means. What it really means to batter somebody down with my intellectual and physical skill set until they no longer have the ability to defend themselves, and what it really looks like to see something as infinitely powerful as a Darth Vader or a Darth Sidious afraid of your willingness to die for the narrative. Yeah, those movies are so politically relevant because they're fundamentally about the distribution of power, whether it be the prequel trilogy or the 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6 were they became an intimate family narrative. They weren't originally going to be an intimate family narrative. The second movie was originally going to branch out into the third movie that was going to be a massive space politics movie. But they found a way over the course of writing it all to make it a family narrative that kept it intimate, so you as a child didn't have to think about the broader politics. But then as you developed into a teenager and a young adult and you started to think about the broader politics, you're like, oh man, fuck, what a lost opportunity. And I agree. But Star Trek was already doing the space opera with the politics. Star Trek was already doing it. We have to accurately remember what was in the artistic milieu of the 80s and 90s, and doing accurate political commentary during Reagan and Clinton and Bush and Obama was a massive faux pas. We cannot behave like these were not massive faux pas. The first movie to break that faux pas was that movie about the market crash in like 2009 or 2010. I don't remember what it was called. I think it had Matt Damon in it. I remember watching it because it had Scott Bakula. Scott Bakula played the FBI agent, and I wanted to watch it just because I wanted a nostalgia trip on Quantum Leap. I wanted to nostalgia trip on when Scott Bakula could still lead a franchise. And so I don't really remember the movie, but that was the first movie that was able to get past the faux pas of doing legitimate social commentary. But if we're going to act like Hollywood was a place to do legitimate social commentary, we are being fallacious, because it absolutely was not. Nobody holds up that fucking movie, Citizen Kane, for social commentary. They hold it up for the pathos that it gives to an evil old man. I would love it if there were a Jew on me. My favorite stripper ever was a Jewess who rubbed her butthole on my face, and it just made me the happiest boy ever. I would be happy with a Jewess on my lap right now. Do you know the real reason that Zoroastrianism was erased? Does anybody know the real reason that Zoroastrianism only exists among the Parsi people, and why the Parsi people are in Pakistan and India and not Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan, where they began? Does anybody know? Does anybody know the real reason? I'll tell you the real reason. You won't like it. It'll make you think bad things about Muslims. You don't even know what you don't even know what Zoroastrianism is. You want to know why? Do you know who Darius the Great is? You ever heard of Dariush? No, this is a good thing. Rach, I want to talk about it because I brought up Zoroastrianism to my buddy Mr. S the other day, and he gave me that tiny pupils look. I didn't see his face, but I could just read his body language through the way he responded. That means didn't respond. He got the tiny pupils of the far away. I do not know what you're talking about, and I don't want to tell you that, because then you're going to tell me, and then I'm going to still not know, but you're going to have told me. Which is, it happens all the fucking time. So no, there's no sorry to be had. Zoroastrianism is that's the racial, cultural, national faith of the Persian people. So the Persian people today are all some denomination or other of Islam, but their racial religion, the religion that they brought to the world stage, that they developed, that Dariush made the national language of the Persian, or not national language, national religion of the Persian people, is called Zoroastrianism, after a guy called Zoroaster who has totally unhistorical dates. Zoroaster probably wasn't even a real dude. He's probably just a collection of faith beliefs and aphorisms of the Persian people over the course of then it would have been like 2000. Give me a second to think. I want to say that the Indo-European language family emerged like 2500 BCE after writing, I think. And so by the exile of the Jews, whenever that was, they had like maybe 2,000 years. And so Zoroaster, he gets these dates that go all the way back to the divergence, the emergence of the Proto-Indo-European language family, and the divergence of the Proto-Indo-European language into the Indo-European language family. Zoroaster gets dates that go all the way back to the divergence. And so that means that Zoroaster was either the name of the guy who left the Proto family, took his family or his group of his tribe and left. So Zoroaster is either the name of the Proto-Persian tribe, or he's just a name that they associated with him for Darius when Darius made Zoroastrianism the national religion. National religion, because that was a necessary, national religion was a necessary thing when you're talking about Mesopotamia. You're talking about the world at the time. They didn't call it a national religion like we do today. They didn't think of it in those terms. That's a modern historical appellation, but that's what they did. He made the Zoroastrian faith, the Zoroastrian God, the Zoroastrian faith system. It was his personal system, and so it was the system that was impressed on everything. It was the system that the world was viewed through and presented. It was represented to the people of Persia in. Okay, so when so that you don't need to know the quibbly specifics of it. That was just the faith system of the Persian people. The Persian people didn't so much convert to Islam as the Arabs moved in to Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and what they did is they forced Zoroastrian daughters into sex marriages purely for the pleasure of the husband. And they did this because Zoroastrian wives had very specific sexual habits that they had to maintain as wives culturally. And so they were forced to convert to Islam and have Islam children, but maintain those sexual practices. And so Islam was extincted because their wives, their daughters were forced into sexual slavery and conversion. That's why. So if you want to talk to me about, oh, Islam is they're so good, they're so nice, they don't force you into, yeah, fuck you. Fuck you. They don't force you to convert, no, they just rape your daughters. Yeah, you wouldn't know that. The university system doesn't want you to know that. The university system wants you to convert to Islam and become a communist so that you just stop asking good questions. By the way, that little tidbit is relevant to our first 8 minutes because the people who run the world now run it. They got the idea. When I was asking you, where did they get the idea to do these things? They got the idea from the Muslims. Where did racism come from? The Muslims. The English got the idea that they were racially superior from the Muslims. This is all historically verifiable. I didn't just make it up. I've read it over and over and over again. The name of the god in Zoroastrianism is Ahura Mazda. You know the Mazda brand car? It's pronounced Matsuda in in Japan because Matsuda is the guy's family name, and he heard the name Ahura Mazda and he's like, hey, that sounds like Matsuda in Japanese, and so Mazda. That's exactly why you didn't know Islam existed, Rach. You didn't need to. It wasn't relevant to your lived experience. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. You can only know and you can only think about the things that are relevant to your lived experience or the things that are presented to you by the people speaking around you. Oh, I don't have any water. Fuck. Yep. So the reason that Wall Street behaves the way Wall Street behaves is because they engage with Japanese businessmen who live in an island culture where they can absolutely abuse their women. They have the power and the money to abuse their women. This is why Wall Street dudes are obsessed with Asia. You go over there and treat a woman any way you want for $1. That's why Mexico, but specifically Honduras and Guatemala, are kept poor because their women are available and cheap. This is why spring break is the way it is in Cancun. You can go pay $5 to watch a woman get raped by a fucking donkey if you want to. Ladyboys are a real thing. This is why Wall Street dudes are the way they are. They didn't get those ideas independently. I don't know if you've ever read it, but read the Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Actually read War is a Racket. Sit down and fucking read it. Don't just read the words. Read it. Allow the information to inform your worldview. I do not support Israel, no. I don't know who Proudhon is. I don't know what people claim of Marx. Whether he plagiarized or not, he's a fucking idiot. Good morning, Jackie. Marx is an idiot and his acolytes are brain dead. Communism is epistemology. It's a lobotomy. It's mental retardation. It's a do not compete clause. Not a non-competition clause. Not I won't go work for the competition. It's a I won't compete at all clause. It's not about self-improvement. It's about competition. I didn't notice that there does seem to be Jackie Chan glasses here. I don't think I'm collecting anything. I might be collecting. I didn't think I was collecting people. Certainly not profiles. What the fuck have I done with my other smoke? Oh, I'm charging it. I'm smart boy. Sure. Sure, but that's a 19th century idea, one way or the other. Even it might even be an 18th century idea. I don't know when or who Proudhon was. Like I said, I don't know the meta of his work, but the whole idea that property is theft is it's a 19th or maybe even 18th century idea in the first place. Theft from whom becomes the question. They didn't have, when he wrote that, when Marx was writing, they didn't have anthropology. The best they had was like Hume and Kant telling you that white people were the only people who ever built anything any kind of engineering sophistication, and so he includes Egyptians as white. So just fuck off with everything that Hume and Kant had to say about anything. The practiced in fire temples. Um, I don't know if it was as interesting as you think. They just kept an eternal flame. Yeah, sure, no problem, Tammy. I wasn't really talking about the specifics of Zoroastrianism. Early bird gets the worm indeed, Jackie. I woke up a lot earlier than I wanted to, and I couldn't go back to sleep. So here we are. I got myself upset about a specific topic, and now I'm talking. I talked about it for 8 minutes, and now I'm talking about things like it. Nietzsche's a dick. Nietzsche is a rich, spoiled bitch. That's my thoughts on Nietzsche. Nietzsche is the woe is me of the underdeveloped rich child. He didn't have an internet to go on, and he didn't have video games to play to piss and moan about how bad it sucks that there are people who are richer than he is. Go fuck yourself. The dude couldn't even write 2 paragraphs that added together. Go fuck himself. He was a failed writer and not as smart as he thought. That's because your dad's got his head screwed on right. No, I don't think he has any viable ideas whatsoever. He didn't have any ideas. He had sentences and sometimes paragraphs mostly just whinging about other people. It was that guy in the bar who gets 2 drinks in and starts talking about how everybody else sucks. Well, Rach, there's a reason that you put up with me. Do I have a favorite philosopher? I mean, Socrates, I guess. I don't tend to get along with Socrates or with philosophers because they're all just footnoting Plato, and Plato was being ironic. I enjoyed the little bit of Soren Kierkegaard that I read, but no, I don't read it. Well, I just told you why I don't like Nietzsche, but why do you think I don't like Nietzsche? Why do you know that I don't like Nietzsche? If my answer didn't tell you the answer, what is your answer? Well, Nietzsche would hate Socrates. Socrates was telling Nietzsche that he was a pussy boy, needed to get over himself. And what Nietzsche didn't want to hear is that he was a pussy boy and needed to get over himself. Nietzsche just wanted to be able to suck cock in public. Damn it. You like Francois de la Rochefoucauld? I don't know who he is. French philosophy, Rachel's going to know what I'm about to say, but French philosophy has always struck me as the blind leading the deaf. I don't know Schopenhauer by name. I haven't read any Schopenhauer. I haven't studied any Schopenhauer. I don't know what Schopenhauer's famous for. It's going to be a long day. I'm already tired. Yeah. Is that why she was bothering me for food this early? She's getting out before the big birds. Yeah, I'm hungry. That is both a good and a bad problem to have because I got to do laundry today. I got to buy nicotine today. I got expenses coming and I'm hungry. And god damn if the bus ride down to TJ's isn't just a fucking bitch. Yeah, I had the same thought, Rach. I was thinking that, yeah, I want corned beef hash and runny eggs. Yes. I should have gone back to sleep. Yeah. Today is not this presentation is not hey, I was hoping to make $50 from this. I was hoping to make any kind of amount of money from this. This isn't really a new Patreon subs. This isn't really a Discord. This is be mindful of what you share and what you say. This is if I have a call to action from this, if I'm talking about anything, it's to remember that there are real victims. Okay? And in your day-to-day life, all right, whether you live in a town as small as Zanesville, as insular as Zanesville, or you live in LA, or you live in Nigeria, or you live in just anywhere else, no matter how dense the population is, no matter how civilized you are, right? No matter how isolated you are from the real thing, you need to be mindful when you're bringing it into yourself and when you're putting it back out of yourself that there are real victims, okay? They may not be present, but they might be. Countless are the number of times that I've been in a group of 2 or more males and they've started talking about how funny it is that other people have been sexually abused. And then I just have to out to them, and I don't want to out to them, but I have to out to them that, hey, yeah, I don't think this is funny because it happened to me. It's not funny. It happened to me. There are real victims. And we're not always trying to hear it. We're not trying to hear about it. And you know what we're really not trying to do? All day long, every day, when we go into what should be a safe social environment, you know what we're not trying to do? Hear about how funny it is from strangers that we were harmed. What we're not trying to do is be bombarded with memes that the downstream effects of these people harmed us too. Yes, you can steal potential. Potential is just kinetic energy. Yeah, you can steal kinetic energy. We steal kinetic energy all the time. That's how your phone is being run right now. All you have to do is, yeah, this is why, like I was talking about, this is why serial killers eat people, because they know they've just stolen all of that potential. So they try to eat it out of guilt that, well, at least their potential will literally feed my body. But what they're doing is a ritual act of cleansing, of purification. They're apologizing in their way. Yeah, you can steal potential. All of my teachers in my education stole my potential. You want to know why I'm not an anthropologist? Oh, I have such an extreme interest in anthropology. You know so much. Why are you not that? Because my first grade teacher told me that all the questions that were available to be asked from a first grade perspective were already answered. Heard that, Tammy. People get crazy ideas in their head because they saw it somewhere else. Fantasy does not come from nowhere. And action always comes from a place of fantasization. This is why, like, if there are chicks where I go, say there's a chick at Pizza Cottage who's interested in me right now and has made it apparent to me that she's interested in me right now. There's a reason I don't fantasize about it, because it takes the reality of the real girl out of the equation when I go to engage with her, because I'm prepared for a fake girl. I'm prepared for, in some way, a pornographic girl. And so when she offers resistance, am I prepared to accept no as an answer? This isn't a complicated conversation. It's an extremely simple conversation that you don't want me to have in front of you because it reflects poorly. Property doesn't steal from another's potential, no. That Rachel owned or owns her home in no way affects my ability to do anything. It affects my ability to own her home. It doesn't affect my potential to do or be anything. And it can't steal from it because I didn't own it. You don't own potential. You can't put a deed on potential. But you can take someone's life. You can take someone's future from them. Potential is just an infinitely uncollapsed waveform. It's just quantum physics. By owning a home, Rachel isn't stealing my potential to own that home. She's collapsing the waveform of my ability to own that home or to have already owned that home. She's collapsing it into another potential, the methods I could get to acquire it from her. She's not stealing anything. She's just collapsing a waveform. Sure. When you guys give me money, you're providing me with potential. You're providing me with kinetic energy. I can spend that money on things you would disapprove of. Fighting the thought of what? I'm not going to TJ's. Not on an empty stomach. That's a long walk. I haven't even decided how I'm going to get to Walmart. Because that's still a hell of a walk. So I might just stop. I might go to Wendy's or McDonald's for breakfast. I gotta get off. I gotta get off the bus at Wendy's to get to Walmart. Or I gotta take the whole fucking hour. I gotta go all the way to downtown, all the way back up. I don't think they sell breakfast at TJ's. I don't think they open before 11 either. I don't think I'm going to wait another 3 hours. And Panera is just too few calories. So we'll see. I need to get something to drink is the most important thing. I don't have any water here in the tent. I'm going to start to dehydrate, which is going to have me hurting all day. Those are both empty. Yes, getting me to eat breakfast is harder than crocheting a mountain. I don't like it. Get you to try? I believe in you, Tammy. I don't necessarily think that you need to own a car in order to be successful. Like, success is measured in what you do, right? And so, like, I don't think people like to hear this, but I think true success is measured by the number of people you employ And wealth is measured in the number of people that you have given access to generational riches. Wealth and success are measured in the number of children that you've put through college, the number of hospital wings that have your name on them, the number of universities that have colleges named after you, the number of grants and I can't remember what they're called now, but grants, right, with your name on them. That's what success is measured in. Success is measured in the lives that you've improved permanently. Okay, well, be safe, Tammy. That's the most important thing. Be safe with your computer, okay? Be safe with your body, with your person. Measure twice, cut once. Yeah. Success is measured by what you do, not by what you make. And certainly not by how much money you generate. You're not making money. Now, we could talk about success being measured in the amount of money you make. But you're not going to like to hear this. You're really going to hate this. When you make $1, when you earn $1, and you put that dollar in a bank, and you leave it there, no intention to ever touch it, you've just made for the bank something like $5 or $10, maybe $15, a lot of money, because every dollar that goes into a savings account and stays there and is able to accrue interest, accrues interest because the bank took that dollar and they divided it up into a bunch of imaginary dollars and they loaned those imaginary dollars out. And then the profit from those loans coming back to them is given to you, it's divided to you in interest. That's where the interest comes from. And so success can be measured in the amount of money you make, by the amount of money that you've stuck in banks that has been turned into loans that have been repaid and generated interest. And you can be measured not in the amount of interest that you've returned as a deductible on your income tax, but you can be measured by the number of people who were able to get home loans on your initial investment. That's not theft. You owning a home, using that home to generate equity that you can then literally store in the bank, and then they can turn that into loans. You're owning a home provided for as many as 15 people's other homes. How's that theft? In what way is that theft? That seems like a mutually propelling, or a mutually propelling system of beneficial investments. I know, Tammy. Thank you. Yes, this, if I'm teaching, is done as a gift. I'm not charging you. There's no ticket price. Reason and morality are not contingent on equality. No. Your socioeconomic status doesn't have anything to do with your ability to do math or your ability to know beneficial from detrimental behaviors. No. People with fewer access to what we call constitutional rights people with less access to what we call constitutional rights, um, they aren't stupid, and they don't do evil things because they have fewer rights. Rights don't make you right. They don't make you good. I established in the first 8 minutes that the reason people do bad things is because they know they can get away with them. It has nothing to do with your equality. In fact, that is an equality of opportunity. We all have the equality of opportunity to do bad things. And that's where fantasization comes from, is you have the opportunity. Maybe you have the idea, but not the opportunity. So when the opportunity strikes you, it's time to act on the fantasy. If you've ever listened to a serial killer, a serial criminal talk, that's how it works. I've been fantasizing about this. I've been prepared for this my whole life, and here's the opportunity to hold up this gas station. I'm so fucking stoked. Every time. That's why small arms, firearms are a problem. Because we've known since the invention of the firearm that the firearm is a coward's weapon. It takes a man to put an object inside another man until he dies. That's why women very rarely kill anyone with their hands. The percentage of women historically, to say nothing of the modern statistics play this out as well. But historically, the number of women who did violence with their hands was approaching zero. Women do violence by other means. And they always use the justification that the environment was just too much for them to handle. All right, take care, Rachie. All right, if I've lost Rach, I've lost Tammy. That means I've lost my members. I've lost my paying audience, right? I wasn't here to talk to my paying audience, but everybody's telling me I need to go eat. The day is telling me I need to go eat, and I've done 2 hours. I need to do laundry at some point during the day, and I need to write. So maybe what I do is I go hop up to Panera, and I get something to eat, and I get my writing done now. And then I go and I hop down to... I just don't want to carry my backpack that long. Maybe then I just walk down to Walmart. I desperately need to buy new clothes. I just need a new outfit of clothes. And I don't really have the money for a new outfit of clothes from Walmart. So I was thinking I'd walk down to Goodwill and just pick up a new pair of pants and a shirt. So I'm just putting it off. I'm sitting here and talking to you guys about a thing that upset me this morning. Beauty and intelligence disrupt hierarchy in the most superficial sorts of ways. But like, think about Greece, okay, where beauty was considered literally divine. So a beautiful slave was considered literally an aspect of the divine that didn't disrupt the social hierarchy. Didn't disrupt the social hierarchy in any way. The child remained a slave. It just got a better life as a temple slave. And intelligence in no way disrupts hierarchy. If intelligence disrupted hierarchy, I would be a CEO. I would be sitting on the top of some pyramid. No. In the most superficial ways possible, but no. Rigid hierarchical structures are designed to incorporate and withstand beauty and intelligence. Think about the Iliad. Beauty started the war, intelligence ended it. Goodwill's further. If I'm gonna write, I have to carry my laptop. And if I'm gonna stream live, I have to carry my headphones. I don't trust leaving my battery bank here in the tent. That's something valuable that could be stolen. That's just inviting someone to destroy my tent. Yes, I am also still in the poverty trap. We're doing the things that allow you to look like you're not in poverty, like wearing clean clothing, take away from your earning potential. Something to think about indeed. Something to think about indeed. All right. This is Ian. Thank you guys very much. Have a good day. I'll be around.